Transformation, Opportunities and Challenges for OTTs in the Crisis Economy. The next session has Mr. Vikram Chandra, founder, Editorji Technologies, as the moderator. Mr. Vikram, I would like to introduce you and invite you onto the platform and to invite the rest of the panel as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be here in this E-frame. That's a very different setting to Hawaii and the Renaissance and everything that I think many of us have got used to over the years. But it's a great chance to meet a lot of old friends and to have this conversation. This is a panel that has got some really, really high-powered speakers, but I'm afraid it's also a panel that I'm going to have some trouble in moderating because there happen to be a fairly large number of Gouravs on this particular panel. So let me introduce them one by one, and then I suspect I'm going to end up using initials a fair amount as we go forward. So Gaurav Banerjee joining us, President, Hindi and English Entertainment at Star India. We do have Gaurav Rakshit, Chief Operating Officer of Viacom 18. Gaurav Gandhi, who's the Director and Country General Manager for Amazon Prime Video. We also have a Gowree, actually. So Gowree is also with us, Gowree Gokhale, partner, Nishith, Desai Associates. Satya Raghavan, breaking the G trend a little bit. Satya Raghavan, who's of course Director, YouTube Content Partnerships in India. And Monika, Shergill, who's also a little away from the G theme. So thank you all so much for being with us, and it's great to have you here. You know, we are going to try and leave this as free-flowing as we possibly can to try and get a sense of where OTT is going and where the world is going. And quite frankly, I think most of the people who are attending this session of Vicky Frames is first wanting to know, my God, what's happening at OTT is fine, and monetization and content. And we'll come to all of that, and that's fine. But please just tell us what's going to happen in the world in general and how have things transformed. I think this has been the most significant transformation points that we have seen in any industry or anywhere in the world in such a short period of time. So what does it mean? What does that mean for the landscape? How much have things changed? Maybe if each of you could just talk about that for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we can get into other themes and subjects and have a more freewheeling discussion. So, Gaurav, why don't you start?
All
right,
which one?
I'm going to pick. I just threw out there who's going to be the first to react. Gaurav Banerjee, why don't you go first? GB, as I will call you now.
Thank you, Vikram. Lovely to be here. I have had the privilege of being at Vicky Frames several times, but this is the first E-frame, and it's in the most challenging times. And therefore, it's wonderful to be here and to be here with lots of friends and ex-colleagues on this panel as well. Wonderful and looking forward to hearing thoughts from all of you. I think I'd just like to make 2 points. One, that I feel that what has happened in the last 4 months will really accelerate change in our country. And it'll do so in many, many different ways, including with the world of OTT and entertainment in general. And a lot of what will get accelerated, we were seeing earlier as well. And one of the biggest shifts, therefore, for us has to be how OTT grows in this country. It was growing. It's been growing at a click, which is unprecedented. And it has accelerated a lot in these last 4 months. People have had more leisure time. They've been stuck at home. More entertainment options are the need of the day. But 2 things there that worry me a little bit. I think the first thing that worries me is that a lot of us and the industry in general seems to have taken OTT to mean niche content. That this is something that is playing out to one small segment in our country. And therefore, in some ways, that dictates content choices, it dictates ambition. But what is actually happening in our country, the opportunity for all of us and for OTT in general could end up being much, much bigger. We already have 500 million smartphones in this country. People want more and more diverse and quality options. And therefore, I think the task for this panel and for the creative community in general is to scope out and make an ambitious play where there is no difference when it comes to scale between what is getting created today for OTT and what could get created tomorrow on television. This could actually be very similar. And I feel the reason that this change has happened in this manner has to do with perhaps a more relaxed understanding of censorship. Maybe that has pushed some of the content choices in this direction. Sometimes it could also be, where did this trend start? And perhaps it started with the more affluent part of this country, and therefore people assume that when you are talking about OTT, you're only talking about the top 5 million people in this country. So I think the massive opportunity exists to entertain all of India. And I think we need to do more to embrace that opportunity. Secondly, I think there is an equal opportunity in India to become a creative hub where stories start and they can truly travel across the globe. And let's just take a look at two examples. Two Oscar-winning amazing movies that were made of Indian stories, Gandhi and then Slumdog Millionaire. But the gap between those two movies is something that we need to deeply think about. And secondly, why does it always seem to need a captain who's perhaps not from India? I think as a storytelling country, as creative talent, as platforms, a massive opportunity is there, which must get seized. And perhaps in this year, an Oscar winner has already shown the way. It comes from Asia and it comes from Korea. What Parasite has done is perhaps even bigger than just the Oscar win. The way it has entertained audiences across the globe is perhaps where the opportunity for our content lies. And that's where I think all of us, with more focused effort, could take the next set of strides on.
All right, that's really interesting. I'm going to now perhaps shift. Let's hear from OTT and a couple of players at least who are already betting quite heavily on content and other things. Gaurav, Gandhi, I'm going to get each one of you to first start by giving us a little sense of what you think of the landscape broadly, but also just want to take off from something that Gaurav Banerjee said about, are we going to see on OTT the same scale as we are seeing on TV and others? And some, including you perhaps, would argue, maybe in some areas it's already larger. We've seen some OTT shows and others which are very big budget and in no way perhaps lower than what you might see in TV and elsewhere. What's your sense of that, Gaurav Gandhi?
Thanks, Vikram. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. So a couple of things. One, at foundational level, we are in extremely difficult times, but two things are really happening at customers, and not just linked to streaming category or media, but generally. One is that trust and safety have become a really important reason for people to make choices. Choices could be about what they want to buy, what they want to do, how they want to behave, where they want to go, time they spend at home and outside. The second is that, they often say it's 70 or 80 days to form a habit, and we have been in this state for 100 days now. So habits are changing and shifting. So that's at the core. I think, of course, the category has seen a big surge, and we've seen a big surge of people watching more people coming and watching, and so on. So that's there. I think that apart, what I feel is, as people in this phase when they had lesser choices of entertainment, there were no theaters, they couldn't get out, general supply of content, right? And they've discovered high value, cinematic value, premium content, and seen that, and seen shows across services. I can talk about ours, like Patal Lok or Omo Shots or many others, and even international shows. They've realized that, hey, these are choices that I didn't make earlier, and this is wonderful, and I want to shift to watching more of this. So that's part one. And the reason I say that, Vikram, is that because in many ways, and I often say this earlier as well, in many ways, streaming is doing to this category in television what the multiplex did to the single screens. As when people were in the 90s and 80s watching a set of kind of films which are made for 1,000-seat audience in a single screen, and they saw a Dil Chahta Hai, made for a multiplex, for example, it was sharply segmented, and it opened a completely new economics for a business. And the streaming world of content is very sharply segmented. And sharply segmented doesn't mean niche. It's just that it's more sharper in the way it's said, and the economics of that are a little different. And that content choices are leading people to believe that, hey, I've been missing all of this great high quality content in the Indian context. I've seen some of these stories around the world. So I think what we are seeing is that a big shift, and I agree with GB here, that it's no longer small and niche. It's actually quite mainstream and big. We see a large number of customers wanting to watch these high quality cinematic value shows. So that's part one. The second part of streaming is also about the fact that this country has always had 2,000 movies being made, but 9,500 screens on theater, of which only about 3,000 odd are from plexes. So they were all, the screen density is amongst the lowest in the world for a country which loves movies. And what they now get a chance is to watch these films at the comfort and safety of their houses, and therefore discover a world that they would probably not do for all kinds of movies. For example, the biggest films in India in theater are watched by 1 to 1.5% of the population. And the most movies are 0.1 to 0.2% of the population. Now think of a scenario where you're from the comfort of your house, you're actually able to watch the biggest films within days of the theatrical. And now in some cases, because your theater is shut, straight there, even before go to cinema. So that's part two. And the third part I think is important is, again, the example of Parasite that Gaurav mentioned. And, we saw that, Parasite was on Prime Video, we saw that people are discovering shows and stories from around the world. And that is not just fundamentally giving them joy of discovering the stories, but raising the bar for everyone creating content here as well. We're going to have content straight there next to films like that, or international shows. And therefore, creators in India are now matching up to that bar and so on. And we saw the example in Patal Lok, for example, which is not just a hit in India. And we were talking about it before that, about Chitrakoot stories, Vikram. But it's hit around the world. So I think in general, it's a fantastic time to be a creator. That's one. But also it's the bar of content is rising so rapidly, and the customer expectation is rising equally rapidly as they discover each new show on the service. So that's really where it is. Only one challenge I will want to quote at what you mentioned. I think the one challenge, currently the industry is facing naturally is, how do we really continue in these times to keep creating that content, that pace and velocity, given the environment we are in? And that's something really we need to all think about, because people's safety comes right first. And then we have to just manage, to continue to supply the content people love. So I'll pause there for others.
I'll come back to the content ecosystem and how that gets created. But Monika, just let me get you in. We've heard from Amazon Prime, so let me get Netflix in now. The point being, when Reed was here and the rest of it, obviously a very big bet is being taken on India, including let's try and get a lot more content out here. So one, has coronavirus and this entire period of lockdown where people have been at their homes, not getting too much entertainment, therefore trying out new things, has this been an inflection point for the good or for the bad? And that's one point. And a slightly related point, when GB was talking about internationalization, and Gaurav Gandhi also referred to it a little bit, it's also in the consumption, isn't it? Because suddenly you are having people, if you told people in a large number of sections, you're going to be binge watching, a series which is entirely in Spanish, like Narcos, or in Hebrew, like Foda, you'd have said, no, it's not going to happen in India, and that's not the sort of thing which works. But it's starting to change. And once you get exposed to that, you say, okay, let me now try something completely different. So we've moved a long way in general, haven't we, from the days when only, Saas Bahu sort of see the. I know there are lots of people from Star present and X here, but there's a movement away to a realization a lot of other things could work. As has happened, I mean, Patal Lok, you see the sort of shows that are coming out on OTT, they're very different. And that's starting to happen on TV as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Vikram, and hi, everyone. I would just like to sort of go back a little bit to 4 months ago, when the world was very different, and all of us would have been in the same room, and yes, probably watching similar content, but things have dramatically changed, and it's been an unprecedented time for the world, and it's no surprise that it's an unprecedented time for the industry also. So everything that we are seeing around us, and I mean, no dystopian film or series could have prepared us for this. So I feel, as Netflix, honestly, Vikram, we feel very fortunate actually that at such a tough time in people's lives, probably we've brought them stories which have made this time a little more bearable. It's people have found comfort in watching that content. They've found distraction, escape, and also it's created a sense of community, in this time of a pandemic. So yes, if you open Netflix app on any given day and you see the top 10 row, You will see that people are watching a hit German series called Dark. They're watching Money Heist. They're watching cinema from all over the world. They're watching Indian cinema. They're watching Indian series. So it's been a time where a lot more people have gravitated to home entertainment services because, as we say, linear shut down, active production, cinemas shut down. So it's led to a lot of discovery. And the good thing is that it's led to the discovery of stories from around the world, different cultures. So I feel that as streaming services, which are catering, which are practically borderless, there is an ability to really make human connections to stories, people from across the world. And that is where we squarely sit. It is not, and I agree and disagree with both the Gauravs here for different reasons. Like GB said that, we are probably being a little myopic, that we are thinking that, we are telling niche stories. I feel that this medium, there are mediums which cater to a large set of an audience at one go, and there is no option to those mediums. But streaming is also a medium. It gives you both opportunities. It gives you a one to many kind of an experience. You can sit together as a family and watch a film. It's difficult to spend 10 hours together as a series. So Netflix cheating comes in, or any other form of cheating from other streaming services. But honestly, it's also, these services do cater to a very specific need in people. And that is also a very important and active human need, which is to find the kind of story and content that you as an individual like. And it's really important for both to coexist. And that is where I think it's fundamentally important that streaming services bring together both creative freedom and creative excellence. And as Netflix, that is what we try to do across all the countries we are. That is what we are attempting to do in India also, as Netflix India, to really work with all the best creators to support the industry, in which all of us are collectively doing. Actually, as streaming services, we are doing a lot of training of talent. We are bringing in a lot of working with the best talent here, and also bringing the best practices from across the world. So this is really genuinely a very, very important time. Since you say inflection point, I would actually not say inflection point in terms of a business, because that is temporary. I firmly believe that when we are on the other side of this pandemic, and people are out of confinement, yes, viewing will go down. It is high right now. Member base is increased for all the services. But I think it will normalize as we go ahead. This is temporary. But yes, in terms of long-term habits, more people, like Gaurav Gandhi also mentioned, more people have gotten used to, they've got a taste of premium storytelling. And that is a good thing. I think overall, all mediums are going to serve their purpose. But I genuinely feel that as an Indian audience, we have not been exposed to so much of great premium content, premium storytelling, to creators from around the world, from India, creators who are finding their voice, both seasoned and new. So I think in that sense, it's an inflection point. We are moving towards a very, very high quality, big on scale, and differentiated storytelling, and really seeing the kind of lives and stories from India on screen, which we haven't seen before.
At some point in this discussion, I'm going to come to the M word, which is obviously monetization. So I am going to come to that at some point to find out who's paying for all of this, but I'll do that in a couple of minutes. Before I return to Gourav, Rakshit, and to Gowree, Satya, let me just get you in. Long before there was OTT or OTT players or streaming and all of this, online video pretty much meant YouTube. So how are things panning out for you on any and all of these fronts? And are you seeing dramatic changes? How do you see the world right now?
Yeah, and thanks, Vikram, for giving me this opportunity, and thanks, Vicky, as well. First of all, I hope everyone out there is staying safe and taking care of your friends and family. I think at YouTube, the last 3 or 4 months, more than ever, has made us realize how important having a mission is, right? So if you look at YouTube, the first set of consumers who started coming mainly from the cities, etc., would have come here mainly for entertainment, whether it is TV or movie or content from sports and things like that. But increasingly, over the last many years, we've seen that a lot of people are actually coming to YouTube not just for entertainment, but also for information and for learning, right? So, which is when this entire pandemic started, we really doubled down to try and see how we could actually help our users with the right kind of information and the right kind of content that can actually help them wherever they are. So, one of the verticals of content that did really well in the last few days was actually food, because a whole lot of people were stuck at home and they were figuring out how to make the best possible or the most nutritious dish with whatever they have. So people searching for 2-ingredient khichdis, or people searching for how to make a cake in a pressure cooker. So I think that more than anything has given a lot of credence to our belief that it's always important to be out there helping consumers, right? And I also do believe that storytelling also helps consumers a lot, because in this journey that we have seen from being a single television channel country to multiple television channels, to TV channels having their own OTTs, to purebred OTTs, or us like YouTube, which is like really a mirror to Indian society in a lot of ways. I think it's important that all of us figure out how is it that we can really help our consumers really get a lot of value from what they're watching. How can we help them in their daily life? Whether it is a student who's right now struggling to figure out how school would continue for them in the next few months, or if it is someone who's stuck somewhere and desperately needs some information. I think that is the one thing that we saw really as being most important in the last few months. I also think that what we've really learned at YouTube is how important it is to really speak the language of your consumer. So the language of YouTube today, I always say, is actually your mother tongue. Regardless of which part of the country you come from, you will find your entertainment content here, you will find informational content, and you will find learning content in your language that you desire, right? So I think it's really important to understand your consumer, figure out how we can be an important part of their life, either being helpful or being entertaining, and figure out how to keep doing that, whether times are good or times are tough.
All right, that I think is really interesting. I'm going to get Gowree to sort of give us an overall view. But before that, let me just get Gaurav, Rakshit to get another industry voice. You've heard a range of views on how life is panning out. What's your take on it?
Sure. So I guess Voot was running for a while, and in this last year we launched a couple of subscription services, one Voot Select and Voot Kids as well, and we were very much sort of going up the learning curve, if you will. And then COVID came, and it's that nothing Jon Snow moment for us, where nothing that we had done so far, while we knew we had to learn, prepped us for what we would have to experience through COVID. And so amidst all the carnage, I think that we had to live through, I think we're also getting a sense that there is some resilience. We've been able to sort of hold stuff together that we didn't think that we would have been able to do in the past. Voot Select we launched in March, so it's essentially grown all through lockdown. It's that kind of product, and it's still is out there live, kicking, thriving. So I think we surprised ourselves, all of us as an industry, in terms of what we were able to deliver, and at the same time there was stuff that we had no anticipation of. I think people have talked about exploding demand, right? 2x, 3x, 4x demand. And that's a great thing, because people are home. Ostensibly, they have a little bit more time on their hands, although I'm not sure that's true of all people at home. And they also have a varied appetite, and there's no fresh content, from other broadcast channels. So it was kind of a perfect, runway, if you will, for the OTT space. What we didn't anticipate, though, was on the supply side. That was going to be a challenge. We didn't have our pipes were not big enough, so we had to actually throttle back resolutions and bandwidths and things like that, so that people could actually consume that much content. So we weren't ready. We didn't have as much talent available and ready logs of content. So we were dry for certain periods. We're still learning how to operate in quarantine to do production. So I think while we probably brought the OTT industry forward by 2 or 3 years, there's a lot of growing up that we have to do as an industry. That's come very quick for all of us, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But I think that it comes with its own set of challenges. Going forward, we'll have to understand how to keep our talent safe. We'll have to tell more interesting stories. We never had to carry the load of being the only entertainment choice. We were always supplemented by film and television, what have you. And suddenly we became the only game in town. And that's a responsibility I don't think that we ever shouldered prior. So those are the kind of things I think which are interesting, and we're going to have to grapple through that through the COVID period. But I think while we do that, video on demand itself, and being able to broadcast to an audience of one, offers a very different paradigm, which I think that we're only starting to imagine and explore. Right, the immersive content where you can actually engage and interact with the user. They're able to Bandersnatch being the very at the very forefront or very small prototype of what potentially will be possible in the future, or blockchain systems where piracy and stuff like that can get controlled. Content ownership will be different. There's a lot that video on demand and streaming unlocks. I think we've successfully moved from being the little engine that could to definitely being what I think is mainstream and a lot quicker, thanks to potentially some of the tailwinds that COVID has provided. But still very, very early days for us as an industry. So excited in terms of where we're headed. A long, long way to go. So that's my take, Vikram.
All right, Gowree, let me just turn to you before I come and dissect some of what has been said out here. Your sense of the overall trends. Look, it's always really interesting in this coronavirus times when you're talking to 80% of industries out there, or industrialists, or business, or MSMEs, or startups, or anyone. There's just gloom and doom and despair, and what are we going to do? And then when you start talking to anybody who's in the digital business or digital video or digital entertainment, it's a very different sort of a story. I mean, what I was just struck by that phrase that Gourav, Rakshit just used, tailwinds from this entire episode. How many industries are there that would describe this as a tailwind? For most people, it's a wall they've run into, not a tailwind. What's the sort of data showing, and your expert opinion of how all of this is actually panning out on the ground?
Sure. So first of all, this entire space, OTT has made my life as a lawyer very entertaining, because I'm seeing very interesting issues coming up. The type of deals that are getting packaged, very, very interesting. Because initially, just if you, like Monika said, if you, sort of do like a sort of 4 years back, the type of deals had some kind of package of the manner in which the deals were being packaged, for say a TV or a theatrical. Now we can see people are experimenting, because you don't have things like back end profit and those type of things coming out in this type of the world, right? So I think that is one. Number two, I'm seeing that a lot of new talent getting opportunity. And maybe I'm digressing here as a lawyer, but because I get to see so many deals, if you, just to take example, Patalok has been discussed on this panel. I mean, there's no star power really out there, but see how well it has done. So we can see that, somewhere, the star power that we saw in the theatrical, not really coming out here. The second thing I'm seeing is a lot of interest on documentaries as well, right? Because when we talk about, not only the entertainment content, but I believe that there is a lot of traction even for documentaries, and we are currently working on some of very, very interesting documentaries as well. The third thing, however, the discussion that we had recently, where we partnered with Fiki on the content addressed to children. And when I say children, I don't mean kids like 18, right? In India, you sort of and 40% to 45% of population is below 18. So I think somewhere, are we really addressing that or not? Those issues I see when I see the type of content that is coming out or the type of deals that I'm doing. The fourth point I would like to make here is in terms of the experimentation. And I think the point that Gaurav and Monika mentioned, in whether niche or not niche, but I think one important aspect is that whether there is a digital measurement out there, and because of digital measurement, whether people will start making similar type of content, niche content, or whether the plurality will continue, because it should not that, okay, this is something that has done well, let's stick to that genre, right? whether that experimentation, okay, there may be some loss here and there, but whether that experimentation and plurality will continue is something, the question I see when the type of deals that are being done. And fourthly, on the on the safety, etc., that was being mentioned, that I mean, slightly digressing, but I saw a good I was exposed to some amount of discussion that the manner in which Maharashtra government has to really come out and sort of help the industry to sort of start shooting and all that. So all that sort of very interesting dynamics out there to ensure the safety and the business, the balancing out of that. That's something that was a very interesting dynamic that I got to witness, as a part of discussion. So I'll just stop here and over to you, and we'll continue the other part. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to just sort of throw something out for everybody, because obviously a lot has changed in 3-4 months now. One of the things that happens is, if you want to do things which are very different, or you want to try something radical, you always keep at the back of your mind, it's going to take a long time for adoption to happen, a long time to accept a new way of doing things, and certainly a long time for the monetization to catch up. And I think I'll say monetization for a minute, but just the pace of change that actually happens. When I was quitting television news and saying I'm going to set up Editorji, the biggest question in the back of my mind was, it's going to take years before you can convince somebody that online video, digital video news can be as good, if not better, than television news. With something like this, that pace of change can actually be accelerated sharply. If anybody had told you 3-4 months ago that it's going to be possible to have a Vicky frames where people sitting in boxes like this, and it's going to be considered normal within 3 months of Corona, this is normal. This Vicky frames taking place, and we're all looking at each other in boxes and chatting, and no one thinks this is unusual. Now, that sort of an inflection point means all sorts of crazy things can potentially happen, and that change can be accelerated in a dramatic manner. So I just want to get any of you who has a take on that and thinks that this is going to therefore signal, it could be signaling it within group dynamics, by the way. Companies such as Star and others, which are very, television is the big breadwinner, suddenly feel, well, actually, that might not be the case. Who knows? It could be digital, that sort of a thing. So I'm trying to think, should we go in reverse order? Gaurav, Banerjee, I want to still take that now that I did refer to Star.
No, thank you. And you did say that I was representing a TV network. I just want to tell you, I represent a TV network and a streaming service. But no, I think I totally agree with you. I think this will accelerate a lot of change. And we have seen that in our company in the last 4 months. I mean, normally we would have thought that, launching a new product, you spend a lot of time thinking about what activation you will do, what kind of outdoors will you put up, right? How will you use print media? We did one of our biggest launches, Disney Plus Hotstar, in a lockdown. And it forced us into thinking very, very differently about every dimension of that launch. And we are personally really happy with the feedback that we have got. And it's been very, very interesting to watch, very well received. I think the second thing that you keep thinking about is how do you, move other dimensions of the content making factory to work from home. And I think one other thing which was very successful for us, not just on our streaming service, but also on our TV network, is the making of promotions, right? So earlier that was centralized, there was a big office, people went in there, they cut a film, it got sent up to head office, someone else watched it, got approved, and went on air. Now that's sort of something that at Star moved to people's homes, and that allowed us to launch a lot of shows during this time. And I'm sure that's what happened at Amazon, that's what happened at Netflix and Voot as well. So people have figured out how to launch an entire new brand. They've figured out how to launch individual shows. They're figuring out how to get a lot more time on development going than they've ever had before. And I was talking to our oldest and most incredible collaborator, Ekta Kapoor, and on a show that she is making with us, which comes back after a 4-month break this Monday. And she said, the script is so good, and I've had so much time to think about it. And guess what? In your defense and in mine, we have never had a 3-month break on any show that we have done before, right? So I think, it's really been a very interesting time and a great opportunity for all of us to deeply think about what's essential and where do we need to spend time and truly create value.
All right, Gaurav, Rakshit, if I could get you in on that point, in group dynamics, is there a dramatic change now from 4 months ago where should budgets go, where should money go, who gets share of voice in a pretty big group? Has that balance of power now shifted almost decisively in favor of digital or not yet?
Yeah, I think what shifted is that we haven't had any production for 2-3 month period, and there's no way to imagine what life would have been like without it. But now that we've had it, it's much easier to make the case that this is how things are going to play out. And I think that that's turning out to be the case for many things post lockdown, where I could have never imagined a situation where my teams would be home cutting promos, as GB was saying, and the like, and launching a channel. But now, all the resistance that one would face, which is the natural thing, saying kabhi nahi hoga, kind of a mindset, that's just gone, because we've kind of in many ways achieved the impossible, or definitely the seemingly incredibly improbable through this period. And so people have started to take those blinkers off, and to your point about the television networks, I think that obviously everybody saw digital coming. I don't think it's not taken anyone by surprise. But the rate of growth that we've seen in this period has forced people to say, you know what, this is now going to be the way things will play out. It's a little ahead of where we had to. Let's recalibrate. So I don't think it's heart surgery either, as yet, at least Vikram is my sense, because on the larger premise in India, unlike a lot of the Western countries, we're still growing on television penetration to some extent. Right? Television hasn't reached every household in India. So in that sense, it's not reached a rapid decline state. So it's an interesting
Gaurav, that's a really good
stage.
point. And if I may jump back in, I think television consumption in India has seen a massive jump as well.
Yeah.
So TV is not sitting out this party, actually is at the center of it, right? And
That's
I think
true.
the top shows 5 to 7 crore people watching a single episode. This kind of aggregation of viewership on TV was last actively captured 5 years ago. So it's a absolutely content ecosystem which has really shown a massive uptick across both TV and digital.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to keep note of. Boundaries are blurring a little bit with what is TV and what is OTT, and other. It looks, for many people you can't tell the difference. But
Even on hook points, let's say, Vikram, for example, like you were mentioning, we used to binge watching was a phenomenon that was always there. Now everyone finishing my shows in 2 days. So the way you tell your stories itself fundamentally is changing. So I think we're questioning everything at this point.
Okay. Satya, one of the questions that comes into this is, of course, monetization. I'm just going to start taking some questions that are coming in also. So, others saying, from a monetization point of view, so I mean, look, I take the point that, look, people are consuming both. Where there was a massive disconnect between television and digital was in things like price, right? Now, by the way, let's not forget that in India, 2 or 3 things have happened, and it's all happening at the same time. It's not just coronavirus, pandemic, lockdown, shift to digital. A lot of the inventory has suddenly gone out. The TikToks and all of this ban continues. Suddenly, that entire video inventory has also gone out of the system, on mobile phones. So, do you think monetization power suddenly changes, and for a content provider or content creator, you suddenly start saying that, well, actually, I can do something, or make a documentary, or make a piece of content, and I almost certainly will be able to recover enough money on something like YouTube to be able to justify the effort?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And, if you look at the way things are panning out, the next 6 months look very interesting, because industries are slowly coming back online. So we can definitely say that, look, consumer goods are spending, FMCG is spending, travel will spend at the right time, and things like that. So we definitely see that thing happening, and things coming back to normal. But I think the more interesting point that we have seen is, more than this monetization, business models are also something very interesting to think about, right? So, for example, on YouTube, I'll give you an example of, let's say, a comedian, right? A comedian not just earns from advertising at any given point of time on YouTube, but in the last 3 or 4 months, we've actually seen them do even more shows than they would have ever done when things were normal, right? So the normal show would happen in a 60-seater room at 8 o'clock at night, and there would be an audience there and all of that. But we're also now seeing a lot of our comedians actually do online shows, right? So the business model of your platform, I think, is very critical to understand. And in a platform like ours, where it's built on revenue sharing, where we give a bulk of our revenues back to our content creators, it's important to figure out what are the business models that you can really tap into. We've also seen a lot of our, we have this very interesting creator called the dance creator. And dance creators, we've seen, are now actually taking classes online on the basis of the community that they have built on YouTube, right? So I think at YouTube, at least we are spending a lot of time to help our content creators and partners understand the power of business models. How to maximize on advertising, whether times are good or bad, how to maximize on direct-to-consumer spending, how to maximize on fan love. So I think we're at a very interesting place where multiple business models are getting unlocked on a platform like YouTube at this point of time. So that's something to really think about and look at monetization as an overall construct.
All right, that's interesting. Let's get Gaurav, Gandhi, and Monika in on that. So Gaurav and Monika, there's obviously been this considerable discussion and debate on monetization and how do you spend the money. Now, both Netflix and Amazon Prime are in a sense lucky that they don't have to worry too much about immediate profitability, although I'm sure that keeps coming up. What do you think the model is going to be? So Monika, is it going to be, look, we're going to do a subscription and that's it, and there's a large enough audience that even if you're charging $199 for a mobile version of Netflix, we'll eventually make enough money in this to be able to justify all the costs? Or are there other models that will emerge?
Actually, for Netflix, we are very clear that it is subscription model for us. We run a very simple in terms of its model, a simple service, which is the same across the world. And we did bring that, fundamental, as it were, game-changing move for India, where we came out with a mobile plan, which is now being used in some of the South Asian countries. But fundamentally, that is going to be our plan. We are not looking at any other model. And I think what we will be focusing on will be more innovation on content and really bringing that out to our potential members across the world. And that is what we want to focus on. We don't want to really get into some complicated either slicing, dicing, or have we are an ad-free environment. That is what entire experience of Netflix from product to content is based on. And we would like to maintain the salience of that actually going. Yeah.
Gaurav, Gandhi?
So
monetization model?
I think two parts in it. First of all, we are an extremely local service when it comes to our offering. We are watched in, over 4,000 towns and cities today. We have 10 languages of content and program for many India, so to say. And second, we are, as a part of the Prime program, a very uniquely designed program, which is best of shopping, shipping, music, and video in one program. And we believe that Indian customers, often people say, are price sensitive. I think they're value sensitive. So as we bring, it's not a price, we bring them immense value. And we have a subscription program at $9.99 a year, $129 a month. We believe that's great value for the kind of content we have. And we continue to create from India as well from around the world. So we are focused on that, Vikram. And I think we are seeing customers really take that on, because as they see more value and they see value and experiences in all our benefits. We talked about all the reasons why people are moving to video, but I also think there's also a big enablement of digital payments which come right now the last few years, and that also is accelerated in this period as well. People are able to buy digital services far more easily and far more comfortably and with a lot more trust in them. So I think all of that put together gives us a really good sign that this is a great model for us to continue to focus on.
Great. Gowree, I'm seeing some of the other questions that are coming in the last 10-15 minutes. So people are asking about how do you expect government regulations to change in this area, and especially all the talk about possible censorship and restrictions. How do you see government regulations?
First of all, I just want to sort of demystify the myth here that, that OTT are not regulated, right? I mean, when we say regulation, probably whether people mean by having a license regime, okay, they are don't do it. They don't need a license. They are an open platform, right? But when you talk about whether they need to comply with the content laws of the country, the answer is yes, because the law, whether something which is illegal offline is illegal online is as simple as that. So those laws obviously are applicable to, the content being viewed in India. Now coming to whether, if at all that content is not appropriate, then what, right? I think that is where I believe, I don't think that anybody else would want to make a comment here, but I know that the industry and the government definitely are working together. And the message that we see from the government is not necessarily that I think Mr. Khare also on this platform made that statement, right? It's not necessarily that you need to control everything. What you need is you need to create is a platform where people have trust in the platform to say that yes, my children are getting protected by appropriate age gating, age rating, etc., and the vulnerables are being taken care of. I think that is where the focus is. And yes, if there is something which is illegal, to address that illegality and move on. I don't believe beyond that we really need anything, because we do have a fair ecosystem in place. And I won't say much on this, but I know that the industry and the government are talking, and industry is working towards achieving these two goals.
Okay, let me just toss to all of you the couple of other questions that are coming in around, the sort of content, the production ecosystem, the talent that is out there. Are people, look, obviously they are struggling. They're not finding it easy to make films. Is there enough talent, or will they find new ways of doing it? Who wants to have a bash at that side of it? You can put your hands up, any of the Gauravs or Gowree or whoever. Okay, Satya wants to go. Satya.
Yeah, no, I think, more than anything, the time is now to actually truly understand that creating content is actually as democratic as it can be, right? All platforms here, we've seen stories come from places where we've never expected them to come, right? So even, for example, one of our, a channel that does really well on YouTube called Dice Media, they had a show called Little Things on YouTube, and the first season ran on YouTube, but now it's on Netflix, right? So it's just amazing that anyone can create content, and you can find your audience, you can find your applauds, you can find your recognition literally anywhere at this point of time. So I really think that content creation has become truly democratic. Obviously, on platforms like YouTube, that was the case, and that's the raison d'etre of our platform in that sense. But I think there aren't as many gates in front of people for them to get their stories seen and recognized today as they used to be at one point of time. So I would urge content creators to really think out of the box, think about how they can write the best possible stories, and choose the best possible option in front of them to achieve what they want. So I think times have really changed.
Okay.
So I'll just want to add here, last 7-8 years, we have seen an interesting shift in India. We never used to have a writer being represented, with an agent or otherwise, right? Now you can actually see that even that talent is getting, represented. They are able to crack the deals the way they want. They have a say in the scheme of things. So I can clearly see a shift when we are, doing these deals. Number two, somewhere I feel that over a period of time, you may actually have a marketplace, kind of a model that may get created for all you know, where you have a buyer, and a supplier, and you can actually get into a pay-per-view or some sort of a model where you are able to create stories and actually monetize them over a platform like this. I believe, I don't know, I mean, over a period of time, not immediately, but that is something which is definitely possible. And the third thing I want to say is that the acceptance, and I think Monika had mentioned this point of discovery. The fact that you can have so much of plurality of the content, and for each content there is a corresponding audience. That confidence has been given by this system in my mind, and that should sort of motivate variety of talent, whether it is actors, whether it is writers, storytellers, comedians, whatever. I think that confidence will be sort of taking the system forward in an accelerated manner is what I feel.
Okay, let me get final thoughts from everyone. Starting from you, Monika, you wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to add to that one in the midst of all the gloom and doom, I think what everyone is saying, and just to add to that, the floodgates have actually opened, Vikram, of so many people, new voices, seasoned people, all reaching out and wanting to tell their stories in short format, like Satya said, or in long format, on different mediums, on different digital mediums. And I think that is something really beautiful, and which each of us as a service, what we can do as a platform or a service to give that opportunity for creators out there, to be able to tell their stories, to be able to find their right audience. And that is something which accelerated a lot, the innovation piece, the wanting to reach out. So I would really say that, that's the upside of what has happened.
But I just want to understand the curve, because obviously it is easy for someone to tell their stories on the equivalent of a TikTok or also some of the new formats that are coming. Slightly tougher to at least find a way to make money and to sell it on YouTube, but perhaps easier. Really tough to get somebody's attention at Amazon or Netflix or Star or Viacom. I mean, is that ladder still that way? Satya, you want to have a bash at that, or is it easier now?
So as I said, right, it's definitely much, much more easier today than it ever was, right? And it's not one or the other, right? You will actually see that everybody will use the right platform to achieve what that platform does best, right? And I think that's what the content creator has to actually understand, that it's not that, there's that one movie silver screen that they have to end up on and generate 100 crores, but it's really multiple things that they can do now. So every content creator has to think about a portfolio of sorts, right? Whether it is something which is of extremely short format, or something which is on YouTube where they're telling, deep stories and with amazing texture, or if it is, telling something amazing like what we see on platforms like Amazon, Netflix, Hotstar, or Voot. I think there's really a portfolio strategy that they have to think about, right? And there's opportunity everywhere.
Great, Gaurav Gandhi.
I was saying, Vikram, just on that, I'll give you an example of what's happened in our service for about 5-6 months. So you started the year with a story from Kabir Khan with the Forgotten Army, which is a very different kind of story with newcomer talent, on-screen talent. But Kabir is a big name. We had 4 more shorts, which is a completely different kind of a show with, again, reasonably popular names, but again, not A-lists, but now become really popular because the show has become a hit. We had a Panchayat from TVF, which is started off, doing great content on YouTube, and now makes amazing content for us as well. And then we had Patal Lok, we talked about enough on this service, but again, making Hathi Rama a household name in the country. Again, if you won't classically say a A-list talent, but has become so popular. So all this, like Monika was saying, allows, a variety of creators and variety of talent to be able to come and show this diversity and the homogeneity one started seeing on television and many years ago, of all kind of content looking similar because the business model was like that. Now as on streaming, you are seeing so many different stories in so many different ways with so much fresh new talent and creators on both the behind the screen and in front of the screen. And that's the amazing part of this business. And it's only going to go from here.
That change and that diversity is very welcome, and the more it happens, it rolls out. I mean, I certainly hope that in areas with like the set of the industry that I was from, which is TV news, starts to change, because the defining cookie cutter there is slightly different right now, and it's probably better for everyone's blood pressure.
No, actually, we are seeing that, Vikram, on platforms, even, I talked about information, right? So we are actually seeing, we've all now seen that 15-second news cycle that keeps happening. But we are actually now seeing amazing people who are actually doing a lot of opinion-based shows where they're actually going deep into issues, unraveling multiple perspectives. So I think even for news, I think there's amazing opportunity to do more than what one ever did before.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we are out of time nearly. So Gaurav, Rakshit, and Gaurav Banerjee, I want to get final thoughts from you. Gaurav, Rakshit, you want to go first?
Sure. I like what Gigi said. I think that OTT is giving the opportunity to tell a lot more stories. The reality is that if you're playing in the broadcast space, you have to play lowest common denominator because you need the maximum eyeballs. But the beauty is, as Monika was saying, that every story can have an audience on streaming because everybody gets to pick when and how they want to watch it. So I love that. The flip side that I think less people talk about is it is an incredibly cruel form of business as well. See, when you have a marketing and people going into the cinema or what have you, or people building habit on television, it's not one click and you're gone. That's how the OTT space also operates. You get a bad review, people don't like it, you're gone. And you could have taken a long time to build something out. So I think that's both the yin and yang of the digital space. You've got to love it. It tells you your report card real quick, but it gives you the opportunity to explore worlds that you wouldn't be able to do in more traditional forms of media. So that's just fine.
All right, last word on this from Gaurav Banerjee, and I think we've actually managed all the Gauravs and the Gowree reasonably well in this.
Well done, Vikram.
Well, Vikram.
There's been no major.
Yes, well done, Vikram. Thank you so much.
We don't all have to address each other, so we managed it, I think, without too much stress. Okay, Gaurav Banerjee, last word from you.
Right, thanks. So yeah, I agree. I think to build on what Gaurav Gandhi said earlier, I think we have an infinite prime time opportunity with streaming. We were all thinking about a lot of constraints. Perhaps many of them were primarily in our own minds, but people thought that, there are 50 weekends or 52 weekends, and therefore only 52 big films can be released in a given year. There are 3 big channels and they do, let's say, 4 hours of prime time content. So only 12 hours of great quality content can be made in Hindi. All those constraints and all those thoughts of limitations have gone away in the last couple of years. More money is being spent to find the next big idea right now between all the people on this panel and a few others than has ever been spent in this country on content. So it is a massive, massive scale opportunity for all the creative talent out there. Life and opportunities have never truly been bigger. But we must seize the day, because the opportunity for us is not just to create the next big India story. The opportunity for us is to create the next Gandhi, the next Slumdog Millionaire, so that we don't lose this battle and only parasites from other markets take over and run this. There's a huge opportunity for all of us here.
And I would actually say it's responsibility as well as an opportunity, because really with all the resources at hand that all of us have between us and such a ready audience to really sample stories and to have the kind of creators we have in this country, I think it's responsibility that we have to give the best content that can match from anywhere in the world.
Right. So it was absolutely fascinating to hear from all of you and good to talk. And hey, look at what change can do. I think it would have taken, at least for those of us from outside Mumbai, it would have taken us 2 days maybe to have a panel like this. Go to fly to Delhi, to Mumbai, spend the night there, travel to Mumbai, and now 1 hour and you've got a lot of insights, a lot of opinions. So change is here, change is accelerating, change is probably good in some areas, and let's hope the OTT sector and streaming in general. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you, Vikram, for a wonderful session. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start the penultimate session for the day titled Regulating Creativity, Overcoming Legacy Challenges to Shape the Future of M&E. This session will start in some time. Please don't go anywhere. Thank you, panel. Thank you, Vikram.